Good morning. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. City Secretary Rebecca Huerta, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Everett Roy.
Present.
Vice Chair Barbara Canales. Okay, he's not here. Board members Gil Hernandez.
Here.
Michael Hunter. Mr. Hunter? Nope. Joe McComb. He's not here. Carrie Robertson Meyer. Ben Molina.
Present.
Tom Schmid.
Here.
Carol Scott. Greg Smith. Carolyn Vaughn. Steve Banta. Mr. Banta, are you here? No?
Sorry, technical issue. I'm here.
No worries. Okay, thank you. Roland Barrera.
Here.
Rudy Garza.
Here.
Paulette Guajardo. Okay. Okay, we do have a quorum of the board present to conduct the meeting.
Okay.
Here.
We have the minutes. The first agenda item is the minutes. Oh, I'm
Just to
sorry.
note,
I'll
public
entertain a
comment.
motion to approve the minutes.
Well, actually, we have a public comment is listed on the agenda. And just for your information, it's item C on the first page there. There were no written public comments received and no call-in requests.
Okay, I apologize.
No worries.
Again, for public comment, there were no comments received.
That's right. Yes, sir.
So next we'll go on to the minutes.
Yes,
I'll
sir.
entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve. Second.
I've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. There is no financial report this morning, and we do not have an executive session. So we'll go to our agenda item, which is a discussion and possible action to approve an extension to the deadline in Section 3A of the agreement with the Breakers at North Beach LP for the development located at 3612 Surfside Boulevard. Good morning.
Sanchez. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the City of Corpus Christi. The item before you is a discussion and possible action to authorize the city manager to execute an amendment to the agreement with the Breakers at North Beach LP for the development located at 3612 Surfside Boulevard for a total incentive amount not to exceed $7,826,200. You should have before you today a copy of the developer's agreement as well as a copy of today's PowerPoint. Next slide, please. On November 29th, 2019, the Reinvestment Zone Number 4 Board approved a project-specific development agreement with the Breakers at North Beach LP for a mixed-use development called the Fraser. The developer is represented by Jeff Blackard and Lynn Fraser. The development agreement is for a 138-unit upscale hotel and a 109-unit luxury multifamily residential development, as well as a 320-unit concealed parking facility on the bottom floor of the development, 47 surface parking spaces, a restaurant, fitness center, pool, and manicured courtyard area. Development costs are estimated at $39,131,000, with an incentive consisting of a project-specific development agreement with a cap of $7,826,200 to be paid over an 18-year period. Reimbursement of the increment on both the Fraser Hotel and La Vista Point have been committed to pay the increment, which dedicates a large portion of the anticipated tax increment reinvestment zone revenue to this incentive. Next slide, please. This slide shows the location of the proposed development, and you can see the red square. Next slide. The first milestone of the agreement was on June the 2nd, 2020, when all necessary permits were to have been issued and construction begun. The developer did not meet this milestone, and so a notice of default was sent on July 15th, 2020. The developer sent a response asking for a 12-month extension. As city staff was evaluating that response to bring to the TERS 4 board, the request was withdrawn and replaced with a request from the developer's attorney to extend the deadline to begin construction 12 months after COVID and extend the deadline to complete construction until 36 months after COVID. This request would have required an amendment to the agreement. Next slide, please. City staff proposed to the developer that a date certain be set to avoid ambiguity as to the end of COVID. After consulting with the health district leadership, it was determined that the end of COVID could reasonably be defined as the end of calendar year 2020 or the beginning of 2023. Therefore, the city responded with an offer to extend the deadline to January 31st, 2024 to commence construction and July 31st, 2026 to complete construction. In addition, city staff proposed the following amendments to the agreement. First, require the hotel to be a 4-star branded hotel or equivalent. Number 2, increase the amount of parking from 22% to 33% for public parking. And number 3, reduce the provision that allows for payment of up to half of the incentive if only the apartments are built to 1/4 of the incentive. Next slide, please. The developer's representative responded with 3 requests. The first was that the developer apply for permits 90 days after the city commences construction on the North Beach Canal. Number 2, the developer would begin construction 30 days after obtaining the permits. And number 3, the developer would complete construction 3 years after obtaining the permits. This new change, however, changed the timeline significantly. When the developer agreement was initially negotiated, it was known that the development would be completed before the canal construction. Now the developer has asked to change the timeline to acquire the canal before the development. Since the TERS 4 board does not have control over timing of the construction of the canal, the developer's request asks you to approve an amendment that creates an uncertain or ambiguous deadline that neither the TERS number 4 board nor the developer can control. Our city legal cannot approve this amendment as to form because it is not advisable or legally sound. Next slide, please. Therefore, city staff is recommending the amendment noted in your agenda memorandum, authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment to the agreement with the Breakers at North Beach LP for the development located at 3612 Surfside Boulevard for a total incentive amount not to exceed $7,826,200, which, number 1, extends the performance deadlines in Section 3A and 3B to require the developer to obtain the necessary permits and commence construction on or before January the 31st, 2024, and to complete construction by July 31st, 2026. And these dates comply with the end of COVID to the best of our knowledge, as was initially requested. Number 2, amend Section 1A6 of the agreement to allow for partial payment of up to 1/4 of the total maximum incentive amount if only the apartments are developed and not the hotel. And number 3, amend Exhibit A to add the following requirements: that the hotel be a 4-star branded hotel or part of a lifestyle collection of a major hotel brand, and that 33% of the parking spaces constructed as part of the development be available for public parking. If the TERS 4 board and the developer cannot come to an agreement on a modification of terms at today's meeting, it is recommended to terminate the incentive agreement today. This concludes city staff's presentation, and I will turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions at this time? Board Member Garza? Oh. Board Member Vaughn?
Well, I'm looking at the language here, and you made the motion to negotiate the extension of the agreement. I'm trying to figure out why we're negotiating the agreement. Put all these changes in there. Manager, the staff, who?
Well, the extension of the agreement then would be the two dates that we discussed, the January 24 and the July 26. And then we thought that we had initially discussed the four-star branded hotel. And so while we were discussing the agreement, we would like to recommend to the board to add those to the agreement as well.
Why would you do that? It sounds like what y'all are doing is using leverage because he doesn't have the extension to make him do the stuff that he doesn't want to do. We had an agreement. Why aren't we, you know what, I just don't understand what's going on here. Ridiculous. I've not seen it another TERS where you wanted a four-star hotel. We didn't do it downtown, we didn't do it over here in C District. And to sit there and tell him he has to do this is ridiculous. It's just like y'all are trying, whose idea was it to add it? The staff, and who's the staff?
Well, Mrs. Vaughn, I believe when we initially discussed the agreement, it was going to be a four-star hotel. We just wanted to document it in the agreement.
What language do you have in there? Did you read his language on the description, what he was gonna do?
Yes, ma'am.
So why did we change that language? That's what we're doing, we're changing his language. Hey, do we have anybody else out there that wants to build a $40 million hotel over here? We have two people here, Lynn Frazier and Jeff Blackford, that have proven to this community what they can do. You've got La Vista Point, you've got the Lighthouse going up. You've got Greasy Village out there, they're already clearing out. People are watching how we welcome our developers. And I don't think, Jeff, I've said it so many times, there's a personality conflict somewhere. I sat and I watched this council with the sports center. How many extensions did y'all give them? It all fell through. This is a legitimate developer, and Lynn Frazier is a legitimate developer. So I don't understand. I make a motion that we approve it just exactly how he presented to us without asking, putting anything else in there, and give him the extension.
Excuse me, Chairman?
Yes.
Paulette.
Yes, Paulette.
Yeah,
Chair.
I have a quick question. So Constance, can you go back to the five-star, or I'm sorry, the hotel? What was that hotel supposed to be initially?
Can I say the name? It was supposed to be a Marriott, what, tribute?
No, I mean,
Tribute.
what star rating?
Oh, in the current agreement, it just says luxury hotel.
But the conversation with the community was a Marriott luxury brand hotel. The agreement, though, didn't state that. So it was stated on the public record, you know, at our council meetings, the developer and the developer's agents said it was going to be a Marriott branded hotel.
Okay,
Yeah.
but was there a star rating associated with that, Peter, initially? Probably,
Yeah, that, our attorneys are saying that the Tribute Hotel is equivalent to a four-star. And so the agreement, though, Exhibit A just says an upscale hotel. And so, and we did work with the developer, the attorneys did, back in November, December of last year. So since we're back at renegotiating the contract, we thought it'd be important to clarify
Right.
that in this version.
okay.
So
I just
we're
wanted
not-
to clarify that because I wasn't sure based on what Ms. Vaughn just stated.
Yeah, I don't-
And I think, you know, coming back to the table obviously is a good, well, it's the way it happened and not by our choice. I think it's important to remember that we're following through. The construction didn't happen. And we reached out to the developer to ask why not. So let's not forget that when we're trying to work this through because something needs to be done out there. And I think he is proposing to do that. And that's what we're doing. This all would have been based on the original contract and discussion had this gone through. And I think that's important to note. We are working with the developer. He didn't follow through. He didn't even call to let us know. We called him to say, by the way, you've missed your deadline, but let's continue to work together. So I think it needs to be a little give and take here and working together to move something forward. I mean, isn't that the point here let's get something moving out on North Beach? We're not the developers or constructors, he is. So, I mean, I'm happy to see that you and the staff, you know, have put something together to continue the project. I think, let's see, I think that's all the question I had. Thank you.
Board Member Hernandez?
Did you have?
Board Member Garza, I'm sorry. Did you?
I'll go first. I guess I'm a little bit disappointed in the fact that we're ready to terminate the contract or the agreement today. I mean, I don't see a line of people willing to come out here and build a hotel of any kind on North Beach. I also think that when Councilwoman Guajardo's talking about them not doing anything, I mean, we know we're in the middle of a COVID-19. I can't imagine anybody building a hotel in this environment. When you look at the example of North Beach and Padre Island, I mean, we went through 14 or 15 years of patience with a developer out there in order to be able to get the canal. And I think the canal and the development out there at Lake Padre is going to be beautiful someday. But I think it took a lot of patience for us to get there. And we didn't get something going right then when we expected to get it done. Certainly, the Slitterbahn and the Waves Resort, whatever it's called now, is certainly not a 4-star hotel out there. And the island has a lot bigger draw than at this point North Beach does. I mean, it's got a lot more potential, a lot more land. Certainly, Councilman Smith has made the point that there's a lot more potential for development out on the island because of the landmass. So again, we don't have people lining, getting in line to do projects here. I can't imagine the business environment that we're going to have when we're trying to get downtown back to where it was before COVID-19. And anything the positive that happens over in North Beach is going to spill over positively on downtown. I mean, I think we need to do whatever we need to do in order to give it a chance. Right? And talking about terminating agreement, regardless of what we come up with, what we decide, and what the developer wants, and back and forth, I just think today, terminating the agreement today, I think would be just an injustice to what we're trying to do. I see us creating TERS and green space, and there's going to be more people asking for more TERS further south, and we're doing more and more to try to spread ourselves as thin as we possibly can, developing areas or building cities away from our inner core, and we're going to allow Corpus Christi to just decay like a dying carcass if we don't look for ways to incentivize things that might happen either on North Beach or downtown. And so again, I know this is a real tough environment. I think we need to exercise a little patience. We need to work back and forth. I don't know where the number, I'm certainly for more public parking, but I know that the cost of creating a parking structure is high, $7 million. I mean, it may just help be able to reimburse them for the type of parking structure that we're asking them to do. And then to say we're going to require you to throw in more public parking spaces, I think is a bit of a handcuff too. So again, I just think that we need to do what we can to be able to give the developer a chance, whether it be, and I like the timelines going out to 2024 and 2026. But again, I don't know how this particular environment that we're in right now is going to bounce back. And we've seen good crowds at the beaches, but I certainly don't see good business activity downtown. And I don't know what it's going to take to get us back to where we were. My concerns. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody out in the cloud that would like to make comment?
Yeah, Everett, I would. This is Tom Schmidt.
Yes, Board Member Smith.
I think it seems like we're pretty far apart right now. And I don't think what Blackard's group is suggesting is ideal. And I don't think what the city staff has recommended is ideal. And I agree with some of the other council members that I would not be in favor of terminating the agreement, considering we're so far apart. COVID certainly has had an impact on this. I think probably the bigger issue is the uncertainty about the canal. And we're moving forward now with the preliminary study to determine the feasibility of the canal. We'll have the results of that within the next couple of months. And I think the next step after that is being able to design a full-fledged canal system. And once we do that, I think that would give the developer enough information. I don't think we necessarily can promise that we'll start digging the canal before that project happens, but at least if we present a very detailed plan of what the canal would look like, all the parameters, the elevations. That would alleviate all of the concerns that I think they have regarding elevations and things like that. So I would encourage us to continue negotiating and try to come up with a better launch mechanism for the project rather than construction of the canal, more so along the lines of the design of the canal. Thanks.
Thank you. Board Member Robertson Meyer.
Okay, I guess you've all heard the saying about looking a gift horse in the mouth. Well, this is the best gift North Beach and the city have ever had in Glenn Frazier's willingness to spend his life savings to improve our neighborhood, to improve the gateway to our city. And so when you get a free horse, you don't open its mouth and check out the teeth and demand that they make a lot of changes in this horse before they give it to you, right? That's what I'm talking about with that. So that overall is just what I was going to say. But I want to go ahead and say it. It's that how is trying to make it difficult development to come through beneficial in the least to the city? Yeah, that's all I've been seeing. This is the Collier Times newspaper article dated July 18th, where I believe it was our city manager who contacted the press to say that this developer had, quote, what do they call it, reneged on his agreement or is late. When do we ever do that as a city? When do we ever call the press and then actively talk to the press about a contract that we have with someone? It just doesn't make any sense that they would go to the press with that. And the headline reads, $4 million hotel developer defaults on agreement. So that's the press that we're sending out intentionally, proactively sending this out to the press. So that sets the tone right there. These investors have been busy during COVID. How many businesses in Corpus have been negatively impacted by COVID? Okay, a lot, most businesses. Yet, you know what? Lynn Frazier over at the Lighthouse, they have been busy. They have been bringing in rocks and building this development that will last through the ages. Okay, they're building a new lighthouse at the beginning of our city that will become an icon. We'll probably put it on the city logo. And yet we're treating them like they're some untrustworthy developer that is not proven their merit. And we're nitpicking this contract. We're adding stuff to it. I mean, after COVID, who knows what tourism's going to be like? Are people going to keep coming on vacation? Do we need to say it has to be a hotel? What if they just decided that they wanted to make it into high-end apartments for all the people that are coming into Corpus to work for the port, with the port's expansion? We don't know what's going to happen after COVID. Nobody does. So why is the city staff adding stuff into this to make it harder for them? With the parking, okay, they're saying, oh, now we need 33 parking spaces for the public. The city has a ton of land where we can develop parking for beach users, and that's who's coming to our city, okay? That's who's coming to North Beach. That's who's going to be coming. We have public parks, Surfside Park, we've got Dolphin Park. We have been recommending for years that the city do a plan for that public land. Put public parking there when these developments come and they take away where people are parking now. So to task a developer with supplying public parking when we ourselves own all this land right by the beach that we could make into parking, I just think it looks from the public's perspective like we are nickel and diming this guy and trying to get him to not build here and to go away. You know what? He's not going away. You can make it as hard as you want, but he's already investing. He's got a beautiful home there in our neighborhood. He's a member of our neighborhood group. This is Lynn Frazier. He's building a $24 million resort right now under construction. I don't know if you've been over there, but drive over there if you can get through the flooded streets, that is. that we don't have a canal for, that we don't have a solution for yet. If you can get to the lighthouse without driving through water, which you can't. So anyway, it sounds like I'm rambling, but all these things are connected. We have a huge problem with drainage there. How would anyone want to spend $40 million on a hotel until the drainage is fixed and until you can see on paper exactly how that drainage is going to work for not only his hotel, but the rest of the neighborhood, the rest of the attractions? Okay, guess what happened the other day, 2 days ago? The city came in and closed down the road that was going to the aquarium and the Lexington. They had to close it down. They thought, Zanoni was able to figure out a way to not have that happen, but for 2 or 3 hours, the main road to the aquarium and the Lexington was closed. People were turning around and leaving North Beach because of our faulty drainage system. The canal has to happen, and the elevation of the land has to happen before anything is going to happen on North Beach.
Okay.
And we can nickel
Thank
and
you.
dime this $40 million project, and we can try to get them to go away, or we can thank them for what they're doing for our city.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Chair, can I just correct the record on one thing, if you don't mind?
Yes.
Yeah, I
City
appreciate it.
Manager.
I just want it, because, so I did not contact the press, as Ms. Meyer said. The press contacted me and asked me questions, and I respond when they do. So I didn't proactively call the press and initiate that article, but rather they contacted me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board Member McComb? I see your light on. I don't know where you're at.
Did you want to? Okay, no, that was me, Paulette.
Okay,
I also, Mr. Zanoni, thank you for clarifying that. I think it's important. A lot of this, this conversation sounds like people are against one another, and we're not. We are all the same board, and we all may have our points to discuss, but for starters, staff and Peter are not against the TERS or any project for development. And I know that for a fact. So that needs to be clarified, because I think it's very unfair to say some of the things that were just said about Mr. Zanoni. You're inferring to him and his team, which is our team. So that said, to address a couple of the things there, we need to leave the names and the developers out of this discussion. Just talk about the project. This is not about Lynn Frazier. This is not about Mr. Blackard. This is about growth on North Beach and using the taxpayer dollar to do it. So when it's said, how can we be doing this to Lynn Frazier and Blackard? It is not anything that's being done to Lynn Frazier or Mr. Blackard. The first contract was not followed through. So when you have, this is a business deal. When you have a contract that didn't follow through, it failed because of whatever the reason. And we weren't even, and that's just I hate to keep bringing it up, but in business, it's a courtesy to say, I'm going to take almost $8 million of taxpayer dollars if I do this. That's your part of the deal, city. I'm not going to be able to make this deadline. Please extend it for me. That's what usually happens. So that's why, Carrie, we are looking at this saying we may need to instill, I mean, this is my thought. We may need to instill some milestones, because the first contract, agreement didn't go through. It didn't happen. We didn't know why. We weren't contacted by them. So if $8 million, okay, if somebody walked in here today and said, I want to do this, and I want you to incentivize me $8 million, we'd have to discuss that. And if you don't follow through with that, wouldn't we be sitting back at the table to say, okay, we need to make sure this is not going to happen again? And let's look at this. We need this. We need the project. I'm for that, but we need to keep the individuals out of this and look at this as a business deal, because that's what it is. And it was the developer who came up with the idea of a luxury hotel. A luxury hotel, I mean, I don't understand. To me, I'm fine with the 4-star. That's a luxury hotel. A 5-star is a luxury hotel. If that wasn't specified, the word luxury was, and the word, the name Marriott. So I'm not sure what the big deal is there, unless there isn't a plan to put a luxury hotel. That shouldn't be an issue. Don't we want a 4-star or a luxury? So I would advise it, or just suggest let's all work together, opposed to, shooting arrows and saying, you did this, you did that. The facts are the facts. The news media comes around and they look at recordings of video of our meetings, and that's where they get the facts. And then they go speak to people. No one's trying to kill anything. And I think we really need to work together so that we do get something done out there.
All right, Board Member Hernandez?
Okay, thank you. I want to kind of have an understanding as to what the legal issue is about tying it to the drainage or canal issue. I was wondering if, Amy, if you could kind of explain what your position is there.
Sure. For the record, Amy Alcorn-Reed, Assistant City Attorney. Basically, the proposal requests that we set a deadline that's not a specified deadline, that's not based on any action that either the developer or this board controls, because this board is not funding the canal and therefore has no control over if or when the canal is constructed. And so also, the proposal doesn't speak to what happens if City Council, as its own separate body, decides after this study that we're doing that the canal is not feasible and cannot be done. So if City Council then decides not to build that canal, what happens? In our agreement, there's no provision for that.
Okay, so why wouldn't we have thought about a provision for that?
So our staff's recommendation through the city manager is the one that was presented to you.
City manager sent me sent pictures to City Council just the last couple of days on how flooded North Beach is.
Yeah, we do
I don't
have
know
a-
how you would build a hotel with a flooded.
Yeah, Councilman, we do have a provision that's a date specific. So we've worked, contrary to what's been said by some members today, we've worked several options with the developer and the developer's representative. First, they wanted the time. We said, no problem, 12 months, we can do it. Then they said, no, we want it when COVID ends. So we came up with that solution, working with the health director, and came up with another date specific. The third option they want is just when the canal's done, but that has no deadline and no timeline. And so in effect, you're tying up TERS money for an unknown
Okay,
condition,
just
an unknown
for
situation.
correction purposes, I think it's when it starts, not when it's done, right?
Okay, yeah, when it starts is what they said. But that's unknown, and so what we're doing in effect is tying up the TERS tax dollars for something that has no specific start or end to it. And
Okay.
it could go on for a decade, so you'd have $8 million just sitting there. The goal of the TERS, in simple terms, is to economically develop, or is to help develop North Beach, right, economically, and revitalize it. That's the goal of this board, of the TERS board. So the goal is, let's invest the money into the peninsula by setting up an unknown condition, which is start the agreement when the canal starts. That's unknown. There's too many unknown factors. And what Amy said is this board can't control the canal. The city's doing that. And so in effect, there's a condition that can't be satisfied, and it basically stymies the bigger goal, which is let's get North Beach redeveloped economically and neighborhood economic redevelopment.
Well, without any drainage solution, what good does a TERS do?
That's right. Nobody's in disagreement with that statement, Councilman. What we're saying, though, is we need a date specific.
Okay.
Yeah, otherwise
If-
yeah.
I see that the attorney for the developers here, I was wondering if I could ask him a question in regards to
Yeah.
how, since you're an attorney, what's your legal opinion on that tying it to, and you would have to come up here.
Give me 12 people in the box and I'm okay, but I'm not real good on the formality of how we do this. So go ahead, if you'll repeat
Okay,
your
just
question.
asking the question, I'd asked the city staff and the city attorney about tying it to a drainage thing, and there are some points that they're making that it is not something that we control as a TERS board. However, I do see that the correlation with fixing the drainage in North Beach and being able to economically develop it through TERS. So just from your perspective, ideally you would want that to be the case. However, looking at the timeline that they're asking for of 2024 and 2026, kind of give us your thoughts on both of those.
Kind of a lot there for me to bundle, and I apologize. It's in front of me, but I'm probably supposed to be on the microphone too. First of all, I think you can write the agreement with a specific date or without a specific date, and it is an enforceable agreement. I think that the way that we proposed it, tying it to the city breaking ground essentially on a canal, the way that we wrote it, quite frankly, puts the timeline at the charge of, or puts the city in charge of the timeline. If you put a 2024 and a 2026 date in there, we felt like it actually gives the city and the developer permission to not be more urgent in how they're going forward. And so we thought, let's put the first foot first and let's see ground broken on the canal, and then immediately require the developer to step up and break ground, get permits, and break ground on his project or their project. You can write it either way. You could even write a combination. I'll go ahead and volunteer this to you because it's something I thought about, a combination where you left the exact language that we proposed in it, with the idea that hopefully that would be an incentive for the city and the development to occur sooner, not later. And then you could put a backstop on it with some actual hard dates if you wanted to do a hybrid, so to speak. I think that's the answer to that piece of it.
So you're asking for something like a trigger, so if the city goes with the canal before your dates, that you would have a trigger to start earlier?
Yeah, yes, and again, because we were concerned that putting in, because the city was very clear that they'd go to 2024 and 2026 as those two target dates for the developer's obligation to begin and the developer's obligation to complete. That's not where the disagreement really came up. The real disagreement came up, and quite frankly, I'm a lawyer, so I do what my client asks me to do, and so that means I'm supposed to be talking about an extension. And in my mind, the TERS board, they wanted there to be a conversation about an extension. I don't know how to have it. To me, it's just really going outside of boundaries for those lawyers to try to then inject new subject matters for debate or leverage or whatever reason. So I tried to stay away from that, and quite frankly, told opposing counsel that if it was the will of the TERS board to try to discuss those other issues, we could do that at a later time, but only if there's a will on both sides to address that. And so I tried to stay focused on the extension and what would be a good workable way to make that be something, and that is something that would be workable and be successful. And I think the language we proposed is really is the best language. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure. I got a little bit astray there, I think.
I understand what you're saying. However, on the dates that they're asking for, because city staff would like to see some more solid dates.
Okay, and Councilman, just interrupt. So those are not the dates we asked for. That coincides with the event that the attorney asked for, which was at the end of COVID. So we helped to define that for him with the help of the health director.
Okay, I understand, but what I'm saying is that you want a specific date. You don't want to have it open-ended.
Right. Yes.
Those were their dates, not ours, and I don't know when I don't know how we're going to define the end of COVID. I got a real issue with that. But
You asked for it, so you didn't define it, so we did for you.
Okay.
With your help, yeah.
All right.
If you know when COVID's going to be done, I'm happy.
We're talking about semantics. Who knows what's going to happen next year? I'm not necessarily worried about that. But ideally, I have to agree with Board Member Vaughn on adding additional requirements seems a little unnecessary and almost a poison pill in reflection to trying to get this deal done. We actually want to encourage development, not hinder it, or create something that would cause us to terminate the agreement, which is the last thing that I would like to see done. So I will second, and I'll clarify, second the motion made by Carolyn Vaughn to accept the extension to these dates without any additional amendments to the agreement.
May I clarify a couple of things on this? Under the agreement, what the board has the authority to do unilaterally is extend the first deadline. Anything else would require a contract amendment. So what you're proposing sounds like a contract amendment that would extend it to these dates certain, or would extend it to when? Because what the board can do is authorize the city manager to execute a contract amendment, or the board can approve the extension of the first deadline to begin construction. Anything other than that extension requires a contract amendment.
I'm going by what you have in your, Dougie, that's okay.
Okay.
We're done. I'm going by what you have here. I guess that's what we're assuming, that this is your recommendation to, for an amendment.
To those dates. That's what I was checking.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, there's two parts to this: extension of the dates to 2024 and 2026, and then additional amendments. The motion from Board Member Vaughn was for the extension of the dates to the dates that you have here, and without any additional amendments to the agreement.
Okay, so just for clarity, that would be a motion authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment, amending those two dates in section 3A and 3B. I just want to make sure the motion is clear from a legal perspective.
Was that not what I said?
It's just the semantics of the words authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement.
Okay, so I guess the Board Member Vaughn has to restate her motion?
So explain, I want to say a couple of things before I do it. First off, this board is the one that's in charge of what is to be done. The city manager's not, the attorney's not. We give them direction, and the direction was to do the extension. My other thing is this. A lot of people do not obviously understand what the TERS is, because it's not city taxes paying for his development. It's the taxes that he's going to pay in within 20 years. That's what it is. So there's not $8 million sitting there just waiting to be spent tying up the board. If anyone's tying up money, it's the city, because they're the only ones getting paid back. And you have to know, and the names of these developers do need to be out, because anybody that's been in business knows you have to know who your developer is, you have to know their success, you have to know that they are legitimate. So it's important to say Lynn Frazier. It's important to say Jeff Blackard. I'm happy to say that. And you got to remember this, no one in their right mind is going to spend $40 million and build anything, any kind of building in an area that's got flooding. So he has to know, he has to have some kind of insurance that canal is going to be built. Why would he build over there? None of us would put $40 million in there if we had it, if we knew it was going to flood. I had a lady call me yesterday from over there. She had all these cancellations because of the flooding waters. No businessman's going to do that. So what you're telling me is my amendment, my motion is going to be to extend the extension with.
Amy, could you?
Based on what Councilman Hernandez was saying.
I can't hear you very good.
I'm sorry. Based on what Councilman Hernandez was saying, my understanding of what he was suggesting was a motion authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment to the agreement which extends the deadlines in section 3A and 3B to those dates of January 31st, 2024 and July 31st, 2026. That's what I understood Mr. Hernandez was saying, and I believe he was checking if that was your motion.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I wanted you to restate the motion that.
And we'll go by what she just said, but I want to make sure with his lawyer that that's exactly what we're wanting to do. I don't want any questions that we have to come back in here and redo this.
I don't think it's exactly what he wants, but I think it'll be acceptable. So
Right now, I want to make sure I understand. Are you willing to amend your motion?
I'm not willing to amend it unless I know that's what Jeff Blackard's going to accept. So I need to know that from his attorney.
You're going to have to restate it for me because I did not put my hearing aids on, and I apologize.
Oh,
But
well,
that-
I want to
let me-
If
make,
you can restate it maybe for me.
Let me say it. It's to extend it to the dates that are posted here, the 2024 and 2026, with no other amendments. Would that,
Will that be right?
will that be acceptable for this point in time?
You know, hey, and just so you know, right now you're asking me something that by definition I'd have to walk over and talk to my client and get permission to say yes to. I don't have any doubt that addresses the issue, and I want to be very clear. I think the board has the power at any time to make this amendment or revision or extension and to make future amendments or extension. So there's no doubt that
Okay,
that
I
addresses
want
the
to,
issue.
you know, and I
It
think
addresses the
as,
issue.
as a TERS board, we want to address the extending this so we don't have to, so you're not in limbo. Okay, so if she, and like I said, I'd like for you to restate it to those dates, the 2024 to 2026, and then I'll second it and we can vote on it.
May I confer for one moment? It might also help me fully answer your question if I walk right over there.
Okay?
So right now, we have, is that correct?
Can I ask a question while he's conferring, while we're allowing conference? While we're waiting, before we vote? May I, sir?
You're asking, is that appropriate, or what's your
Can
question?
I ask a question? Can I ask a question? I
Sure.
mean,
Go ahead, board member.
Okay, so, Peter, at what point, when is the engineering study for the drainage solution, when is that set to be complete?
By December of this year, Councilman?
December of this year?
Yes, sir.
Now, I'm not the developer. I just have a difficult time trying to negotiate anything until I know what happens there. I just have a difficult time obligating $8 million until we know what's going to happen. I mean, otherwise, I think we're going to be stuck here again, having to amend it in December. You know, I think trying to terminate the agreement now is a little excessive. But another question I have is, and I guess I asked this for my fellow board members who are obviously in support of this deal. I don't necessarily call it a gift horse because we are obligating proposed funds. So it's not necessarily a gift. But if we have no reason to believe that it's not going to be a 4-star hotel, then why would the developer be concerned for us to add that language? So, I mean, if we know we're going to build a 4-star hotel, then why would it be a problem? So that kind of raises a red flag. I mean, I'm in support of any development out there. If anybody's willing to do it, I just think it's premature because let's assume somebody says, you know what, a seawall. I know we said that when the council approved a canal, we approved a stipulation not to be greater than, I think, what was it, Peter, 50 million? Was that what was on the?
Yeah, it was 41.5, Councilman.
I'm sorry, say again?
41.5 million.
Okay, so if the engineering study in December tells us that it's going to be 70 million, well then all of a sudden now we've got a challenge, and then we've got to find those resources. And if somebody says that a seawall would work great, it would serve better than the breakers, and it would fix the drainage solution for everybody, well then that puts the developer in another precarious predicament as far as, I just think there's a lot of unanswered questions, and I think come December, then all of a sudden now, we're gonna have to drop back and punt and say, okay, Mr. Developer, the canal is not the most feasible thing, or the canal is gonna be $100 million. I mean, I'm really interested in, Councilmember Vaughn, I'm looking to you for solutions for those questions, or Gil, I mean, because I want to be on board with you, and I want this to happen. It's just, and I want to protect the developer, but once again, what happens if we say this is the end of COVID? I mean, that's really ambiguous. And then we say once the canal has broken ground, well, $200 million. I mean, you know, that doesn't put the developer in a strong position to go ahead and move forward with a project. I just think that ambiguity is not, creates it just has too many questions.
All right, I want to clarify one thing so that I understand. Right now, we have a motion, and the motion is just based on a date. That's correct. And we have a second on that motion. If that motion went forward and was voted on, the things about the four-star hotel and all the other things are not included in that motion, correct?
That's correct.
So, right now, procedurally, I want to make sure we understand. We have a motion and a second.
Okay.
So with that, go ahead,
You wanted to answer the question?
Board Member Smith?
It's on. Oh, you just turned it off.
Okay. Thank you. I want to visit a little bit about the luxury hotel on this. I think it's an important item. When I first met with the developer, they told me about it. My exact words, this is a game changer for North Beach. Why? Because it was a five-star Marriott. I said here, I don't know if it was TERS or council, this is transformational for North Beach. Again, that was based on having a luxury hotel. Whether it's four-star or five-star, you know, they're both pretty close. As we were going through our TERS funding on that, there's a vast difference between an apartment and a hotel. With a hotel, you bring huge amounts of hot tax, you bring a lot of sales tax through restaurant use on there. More importantly, you bring visitors in short term. So I think having this luxury hotel is a very important part of where we ought to be. That was what was told to all of us in the beginning, the middle, and the end. If we codify it now, I think that's a good thing. And we can be broad in that with it. You know, we don't need a Holiday Inn Express or something like that. My expectations and why I voted on the several votes I made were because of a luxury hotel. Again, the words I use, my words, game changer, transformational. And if we don't get that, it's not a game changer and it's not transformational. It's just, we've got a Radisson out there, we've got other hotels. If we're going to take North Beach to the next step, and I have full confidence in Lynn Frazier in doing that, but why can't we state that with it? What's the problem here? And where we're going on North Beach, so we had an agreement to start in 6 months. They came back to us and asked for a year. Then it ends up going with COVID 2.5 years, and now we're settling on 3 years and 3 months. I think this city is being most receptive to getting this done. And if things happen, which they always do, it can come back, and if they want another 3 years on there, we're not, if there's anything, we extend all the time, just like we're probably going to extend today, and things happen, then it can change. To Mr. Barrera's comment, we don't know about what's going to happen with the canal. The canal is a complex issue on there with it. It could happen in 3 years, it could happen in 10 years, it could not happen at all. And if we're tying to such a nebulous object on there, it's really open-ended. So I thank Councilman Hernandez and Commissioner Vaughn on the date. And again, as time goes on, in another 3 years on there, things can be changed. You know, this isn't cast in stone, the Rosetta Stone on this. You know, we're giving 3 years and 3 months off of an original 6-month deal. I think the city is being most
audio on Councilman Smith.
Most helpful with it on there. And all of us want North Beach to go. And then my last comment, I'm hearing more and more. We've got a lake out there right now. And a canal, I've always supported a canal for an economic reason. It doesn't solve the drainage problem. Elevation's going to solve the drainage problem. Ms. Myers just said that. The roads are too, you know, everything's too low. And until we elevate, we're going to have a drainage problem. So, you know, the canal is an economic incentive. But We get 2.5 feet of water like we get once a year today. North Beach is going to flood, canal or no canal. So we as a body, we need to realize that until we seriously talk about elevating North Beach, we're not going to solve the drainage problem because it's not. It's an elevation problem. The elevation then by itself will solve the drainage problem. You have the gradients necessary for things to drain. So I'm fine with that as long as we put a luxury hotel. If we're voting without the luxury hotel, I will vote no. If we have the luxury hotel in it, I will vote yes. Thank you.
I have a question, City Manager. In this original agreement, does it specify if they didn't build a luxury hotel, does it have anything that states if they build apartments that the reimbursement would be less?
Okay.
So-
Amy will answer that.
Yes, section 1, number 6 at the bottom of, after section 1, specifies that if they construct either the hotel or the apartments, they are eligible to receive up to 1/2 of the incentive amount. So they're not actually, they would have to construct both to get the full almost $8 million, but they could get somewhere around 4 if they constructed only one or the other, as long as it did not exceed 20% of their cost.
So that particular caveat was in the original. So if they didn't build a luxury hotel and they went to an apartment, then they would get a half, and then that, hence, the recommendation of staff right now is to cut that half down to a fourth.
Right, and that was
Is that
because,
correct?
that was because it was our understanding that what we wanted to incentivize was a hotel, and so if they were going to decide to make it not a hotel, the recommendation was to lower that incentive.
Okay. Again, I want to bring us back to the fact that right now, we have a motion and a second. I think with that, we do need to take a vote on that, correct? If we have a motion and a second, is that
Chairman.
correct?
I just stated.
Chairman, can we have Mr. Allison provide his answer?
You had a question pending, and I had a simple answer.
Sure.
The simple answer, when I was asked, and any good lawyer will make sure he talks with his client before he speaks out of turn. I went back and visited, and the simple answer to your question about the proposed dates from the city that you all now have as part of your motion is that, yes, the developer would be agreeable to that extension and work in good faith completely with you all to try to accomplish what I think we ought to mutually be wanting here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And I just want to make sure that Board Member Vaughn restates it to how Amy said it, and I guess it would be simple enough to say, could you repeat that, please?
Just to verify that Ms. Vaughn is okay with this motion, it's a motion authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment to this contract that would extend the deadlines provided in section 3A to January 31st of 2024, and in 3B to July 31st of 2026. It would make no other changes.
That is my motion, what she just said. Something we need to remember, because
and I will
this is
second
going
that.
over our heads. Unless the 40 million is spent, there is not going to be 8 million in the TERS. I just hope y'all understand what the TERS is. This is his money he's spending. Anyway,
Okay.
that's my motion.
Thank you. I want to go ahead and try to continue with this motion before I take any more questions right now. So with
I
that, we
just
have a
one more.
motion
I'm
and a
sorry.
second.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
a couple of questions. We've been having some audio trouble, so we get some of the conversation, then we don't. So we just want to make sure I understand the clarification. If I understand Ms. Vaughn's motion, it is a direct reflection of the recommendation by Mr. Allison that we negotiate an extension of the deadlines, pure and simple, no added items. It's just a date change. We're not renegotiating the contract. We're not putting 1 star, 5 star, 3 stars. We're not now adding apartments to get money that weren't in the original contract. All we're doing by this motion, instead of saying that, the date that's passed is going to be extended to these 2 new dates. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the 3 points that were made earlier in terms of the type of hotel, the apartment, if you went to an apartment, and the additional parking would be not part of that. They're not part of their motion.
All right, because historically, this board has been very amenable to working with someone if they can't meet a deadline.
Right.
And if we're just extending a deadline to accommodate the developer to get their act together, that's fine. But if we're making any changes, for instance, all these conditions that Ms. Myers talked about and all the other people, all these were pre-existing conditions before the developer made a decision to come in and invest money. You're sitting at sea level, it floods. If Gil can take you a picture 2 days ago on North Beach, take a picture today of Houston. You think those people ever thought they'd be flooded in Houston? You cannot beat Mother Nature, and you cannot put a deadline on when Mother Nature is going to happen. I mean, you might as well say, well, we're not going to do anything until they find a cure for cancer, whether it's cancer or COVID or anything else. Any of those intangibles, I'm not interested in doing. If Ms. Vaughn's motion is to just simply say, okay, you've got these new deadlines, and in the meantime, get your act together and meet all the other requirements of the original contract, that's fine. Because the original contract didn't include any reimbursement for apartments. So what you're saying is there, okay, we don't build a hotel, but by the way, we'll get some of our money back. And for clarification, that money that is the TERS is going to be reimbursed is city money. If it wasn't the city's money, then how could we authorize to be reimbursed back to the developer? Because it comes to the city if taxes are paid. So let's don't be playing games and semantics. The city has given up that money in order to make an inducement. And so we made an original agreement. You want to come in and build a hotel and you can't, okay, fine. And you need an extension, okay, fine. Anything related to the development or not development of the canal or anything else, and if you go back and look at the minutes of the meeting, Ms. Myers, everyone has finally come to the realization that drainage is the #1 problem and elevation on the island. There is not a penny, and I asked the question, and you can go back to the minutes, there is not a word in the TERS document that allows any money to address the issue of drainage. And I asked the question, if that's the #1 issue, why isn't drainage an allocated, an allowed expense in the TERS? It was not included.
Okay.
So you don't have to, the TERS is to incentivize people to build on the created land as it is.
Okay.
If we can address these other problems and developments are dependent upon those developments, that's a developer's decision. Nobody's twisted anybody's arm. They've known the history of North Beach for years.
Okay,
Go back and get pictures. So keep it simple. If you want to extend the deadline, pure and simple, I don't have a problem with that.
All right.
We're not renegotiating the terms of the contract.
So we have
I will not support renegotiating the terms of the contract.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. Mrs. Huerta, would you
Wait, point
please?
of clarification. I need clarification on something.
Yes, board member.
Sorry. There have been some things that aren't clear that I would like the city staff to clarify.
Does that pertain to this?
Yeah, like some things that were just said. One is about the TERS reimbursement. Actually, the way the mayor was just saying that that we'll get some of our money back, or talking about taxpayer dollars. The way that the TERS is written is that $7 million that that the developers would be getting back from the TERS is from the taxes that they themselves would have paid that go into the TERS. If another hotel owner wanted, or somebody else wanted to build a hotel, they would get back the money that they had put into the TERS through this agreement. So to say that it's taxpayer money going to a developer, that's not exactly correct. And, that's one point. The second point is what Board Member Smith was saying about the elevation. In the canal proposal, it includes digging out the canal and elevating the sides of the land to reslope the streets and the land to drain into the canal. Elevation is a huge part of the canal project. It's not separate.
Okay, so we have a vote and we have a second. Mrs. Huerta, would you bring call the roll?
Yes, sir. So for passage of motion 2, Chairman Roy,
Aye.
Board Members Canales, is absent. Hernandez,
Aye.
No, she's on.
is she on?
I see her name on there.
Okay. Judge Canales, is your mic muted?
She's doing two Zooms.
Okay,
I've been there.
okay, I can't, so I'm going to list her as absent for now. I can't hear her vote. Board Member Hunter? Mr. Hunter is absent. McComb?
Aye.
Meyer?
Aye.
Molina,
Aye.
Schmidt?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Smith? I said Schmid. Bessa, are you aye? Okay. Vaughn?
Aye.
Banta?
Aye.
Barrera?
Aye.
Garza?
Aye.
Guajardo? The motion passes.
Thank you.
Damn it.
I want to thank everybody for their comments, and the next agenda item that we have is identifying any future agenda items. Are there, yes, Board Member Smith?
Thank you. I don't know if this is really this TERS or the cities, but with Vista Point moving forward on there, we've got a real drainage issue with the turnaround. This is TxDOT, but would it be possible to have a briefing on what can be done to rectify, whether it's equalizers under that turnaround there, or what TxDOT's plans are? Again, this is TxDOT right away, but we should be working closely with them, and that project is maybe 6 months away on there, and I think for a fairly low cost, we can get some improvement on it. So I guess my agenda item is discuss the drainage issue and the 181 turnaround and possible relief for it.
City Manager, should that be a TERS or should that be a city?
Well, it could be either.
Yeah.
We do have, your next meeting, this TERS board's meeting, next meeting is October. That begins the quarterly cycle that you all
Right.
approved. So we could bring that back. I have personally talked to Valente, the TxDOT regional engineer, and they were to have been working on that, but you're right. I noticed it flooded last week when we didn't have any rain, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can get a
Yep.
briefing on them in October.
I
Yeah.
think it would be good to brief the TERS on that, just because we have other community members involved. And then based on that, we may have to take it further and discuss it further with council. So, okay. Any other future agenda items?
Mr. Chairman, this is Barbara Canales. I'm sorry I'm on a hotspot here, but I know that we had to cancel Dr. Ray Perriman's presentation, and I just want to make sure that you don't miss out, or we don't miss out, on the opportunity to hear Dr. Perriman as it particularly relates to Census Tract 63 and 64, which covers the TERS number 4. Could we make certain that we work with Dr. Perriman's schedule and get him recommitted to presenting his scope of work?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member Robinson Meyer?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, during the discussion today, it became apparent that different members of the board have different understandings of how the TERS monies, come into and go out of the TERS. The mayor had said that it's taxpayer dollars that go to the developer. So I have asked for this before, where there's a briefing by staff on exactly how that works and how that is. That in reality, from what I understand, I would just like to know, it is the monies that the developer pays into the TERS that then go back to that same developer. So I would just like a clarification next meeting on how that actually works legally. And I know you say, well, those documents are online, anyone can go look at them. But I need clarification, and if I'm really focused on this and I don't understand it, and we have different people with different interpretations, I think that screams out that we do need staff to explain it.
Yes, that's a good recommendation. Thank you.
And one other thing is that, you know, city council meetings are videotaped and put online on the city's Legistar website and also on the YouTube channel. I don't understand, since this one is videotaped, why there's no video record of these meetings available online.
Ms. Meyer, actually, we've started doing that, beginning with the August 27th meeting, and this meeting will also appear on Legistar.
Thank you.
For easy access.
And so it's available to the public?
Yes, ma'am, it is. It's on YouTube and also through the Legistar system.
Okay, thank you, City Secretary.
Okay. Any other future agenda items? Seeing that there's no future agenda items, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.